It started on a rain-slick morning in Chicago's South Side. The streets glistened with leftover midnight storms, and a strange tension hovered in the air like fog. Officer Kellen Brooks adjusted his duty belt, already annoyed before his first coffee. He didn't need a reason to be angry, his badge gave him one. At 7:32 a.m., a black Cadillac CTS pulled into the curb outside the 12th District Courthouse. A woman in a charcoal gray blazer stepped out, umbrella in one hand, coffee in the other. She moved with precision. Confidence. The kind that made men like Brooks itchy. He didn't recognize her face. He didn't need to. "Ma'am, you can't park there," Brooks barked before she even closed the door. She glanced at the painted sign. "Judge-only parking." "I'm Judge Lennox," she replied, her tone calm but firm. "This is my spot." Brooks squinted. His grip on the handle of his baton tightened just slightly. He didn't like being corrected, especially not by a black woman. "You got ID?" Inside. "I'm late for a hearing." That was enough. 4 minutes. That's all it took. By 7:36 a.m., Judge Lennox was face down on the wet pavement, her coffee spilled beside her, umbrella crushed under Brooks' boot. He had slapped the cup from her hand, grabbed her arm, twisted her wrist behind her back, and shoved her hard against the side of the Cadillac. Her head bounced off the window. Blood, a thin line trickling behind her ear. Nearby onlookers froze. A public defender dropped her phone in shock. A janitor across the street fumbled to start recording. "You got no right." Judge Lennox gasped, dazed but aware. Her voice still held power, and that made him press harder. "You assaulted an officer. You're resisting arrest," Brooks growled. But the moment was already captured. The slap, the brutality, the face of a woman whose courtroom he'd never stepped into. Not yet. A courthouse intern ran inside, screaming, "He's attacking the judge," and call security. Inside the building, chaos was unfolding in parallel. Courtroom 4 billion was packed for a high-profile trial, corruption in the city council. The same trial Judge Lennox was scheduled to preside over in exactly 12 minutes. By 7:39, Lieutenant Ruiz arrived on scene. Her face turned pale as she recognized the woman being shoved into the back of the cruiser. "Jesus Christ, Brooks, that's Judge Lennox." But it was too late. The cameras had caught it. The story was already writing itself. And the Empire Chicago's old, crooked network of silent backroom deals and dirty blue walls had just cracked at its foundation. Because Judge Lennox wasn't just any judge. She was the one who swore she'd bring the whole system down, brick by brick. And now she had a national headline to start with. The fluorescent lights inside the booking room buzzed louder than usual that morning. Officer Brooks stood by the door, arms crossed, heart pounding under his vest. He was trying to control the adrenaline, trying not to look nervous. He told himself she was just another perp, just another case of disrespect. But something in the pit of his stomach was turning to acid. Judge Lennox sat silently at the fingerprinting station. Her hands were scraped, the side of her face swollen. She didn't speak. She didn't protest. She watched. And that silence? That silence was louder than anything she could have said. "Name?" the desk officer asked, already looking down at the intake sheet. "Lennox. Judge Naomi Lennox." Everything stopped. The officer looked up, confused. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," she said calmly. "You're currently booking a sitting Cook County judge. Shall I cite my docket number for today's trial?" Brooks' heart dropped. He had known, but hearing it out loud, in a room full of witnesses, made it real. The room shifted. The whispers started. One of the female officers quietly walked out and made a call on her cell. Not official protocol, but in this moment, everyone knew this was no longer routine. Back at the courthouse, Assistant State Attorney Darnell Hughes was flipping through documents when his paralegal stormed in. "Sir, Judge Lennox was arrested. By one of ours." "What?" Hughes blinked. She never made it upstairs, cuffed in the lot. There's already video spreading. It hit him hard, not just the politics but the optics. A black female judge assaulted, cuffed, bleeding on video. It would ignite something. And not just in Chicago. He pulled out his phone. 32 missed notifications. 6 tags on Twitter. One clip already had over 18,000 views and counting. She didn't resist. She told him she was a judge. He still hit her. How can this happen in front of a courthouse? Meanwhile, Brooks was being led into the lieutenant's office. Lieutenant Ruiz's face was stone. "You're off the street," she said. "Effective immediately." "That woman assaulted me," Brooks shot back. "She's a judge. You laid hands on a judge in her own courthouse parking spot. There's video. There's witnesses. You've ignited a fire that no one can put out." Brooks stared at her, stunned. "What about union counsel?" "They're on their way. But if you're waiting for the department to shield you," she leaned forward, "don't. Because everyone upstairs knows what happened. And the judge? She isn't some soft-spoken newbie on the bench. She's the kind of woman who's spent her life studying the cracks in the system, the kind who knows exactly where to drive the wedge." At 10:46 a.m., Judge Lennox was quietly released from custody. No mugshot. No charges filed yet. But she didn't go home. She walked right back into the courthouse, straight into courtroom 4 billion. The entire gallery stood up. Some gasped. Her face was bruised, one eye slightly red, her left wrist still marked. And without raising her voice, she said, "This court is now in session." Brooks wasn't there to see it. He was still in the precinct, still replaying that slap in his mind. He had thought it was just another morning. He didn't realize it was the beginning of the end. The courtroom was packed. Not because people were scheduled to be there, but because word had spread. A judge had been assaulted. A respected woman, a pillar of judicial reform in Cook County, was slapped in public and dragged across a parking lot like a criminal. Now she sat at the bench, her black robe cloaking the bruises, her gavel resting gently under her fingers. But her eyes, they burned. In the first row sat 2 public defenders, whispering updates to each other. Behind them, a young black woman clutched her phone, watching the video again. The slap, the stumble, the look of disbelief on Judge Lennox's face. The room held its breath. At exactly 11:15 a.m., she began. "This morning," she said, "I experienced firsthand what too many people of color experience far too often: violence, silence, and dismissal." What? Someone gasped. Another muttered, "My God." "I will not comment on pending internal investigations. But let me be clear, this bench will not be used as a shield. It will be used as a mirror. For all of you, for all of us." Hook. Outside, journalists were gathering like crows. Twitter threads were exploding. Judge Lennox. Slap at the system. Courtroom revenge. In the precinct, Officer Brooks sat in a cramped office with 2 IA reps and his union lawyer. "You want to talk?" the investigator asked. Brooks was sweating through his collar. It was a misunderstanding. The lawyer cut in. "You have the right to remain silent." "No," Brooks barked. "She didn't tell me she was a judge." "You didn't ask," the investigator said flatly. Hook. By 2 p.m., national news had picked it up. CNN had a lower third banner. "Chicago judge assaulted by cop case under review." Brooks' name was already trending. His badge number was in the wind. Someone even leaked his wedding photos. It was turning ugly and fast. But the real damage hadn't even started. Because back in court, Judge Lennox paused the docket, then reached under the bench and pulled out a thin leather folder. "I was preparing this for next month," she said, "but justice doesn't wait for comfort." She looked out across the courtroom, then said slowly, I am filing a judicial complaint against Officer Ryan Brooks for use of excessive force, misconduct, and racial profiling. Hook. There was silence, then whispers, then chaos. Even the bailiff looked stunned. Later that night, the footage ran again, this time slowed down. The slap, her reaction. And the moment she looked him in the eye, not as a victim but as a judge. Brooks watched from a dark bar across town, drink in hand, face pale. He thought no one would recognize him. But a man 2 stools down tapped his shoulder. "You're him, right?" Brooks turned. "You slapped the judge." And without waiting, the man got up and left. 2 days later, the hearing began, not a trial, not yet, but a public disciplinary session initiated by the City Ethics Board. Cameras were allowed, and Judge Lennox was ready. Hook. She didn't speak first. Instead, her attorney, a woman with short silver hair and an expression carved from iron, stood up and played the footage. Again. The room was forced to watch not a narrative, not speculation, but undeniable fact. The slap. The shove. The command, "Get down before I put you down." And then her badge slowly slipping from her purse. Hook. The silence was unbearable. Then came the shocker. "The court will now call its first witness," the chairman said. And from the back, a woman in her 60s entered. Thin frame, nervous hands. But she walked with purpose. "My name is Dolores Green," she said into the mic, "and Officer Brooks raided my home 3 years ago. Said there was a tip about drugs. There weren't, just me, and my grandchildren." Gasps. Hook. Dolores continued. "No warrant, no apology, nothing ever filed. But after that, my oldest boy stopped sleeping through the night." The chairman leaned forward. "You never reported this?" "I tried," she said, "but no one called back." Hook. In the hallway outside the chamber, reporters were already forming headlines. Pattern of abuse? Chicago PD under fire again. That night, Judge Lennox went home to find 3 bouquets and a handwritten letter on her porch. No name. Just "You are not alone." Inside, her voicemail was flooded: law professors, civil rights lawyers, even old enemies. But one message stood out. "Your Honor, I know you're in the spotlight now, but you're uncovering more than one bad apple. You're shaking a whole damn tree. Watch your back." Hook. Meanwhile, the police union was scrambling. Brooks had gone silent. Off duty. Out of sight. But his personnel file was now open, and it painted a dark picture. 5 excessive force complaints. 2 racial discrimination reports. 1 internal reprimand sealed from public view. It was worse than PR. It was institutional rot. And someone Judge Lennox had kicked open the door. At City Hall, a quiet meeting was held. 3 council members. The DA. The chief of police. A quiet understanding passed between them. "We need this contained," one said. "If she pushes this to federal level, then the whole department is in trouble. So what do we do?" Hook. They didn't say it outright, but one word echoed: discredit. That same night, Lennox received an envelope slid under her door. No stamp, no return address. Inside, an old mugshot from college. A blurry photo of her entering a hotel 7 years ago attending a legal conference, but cropped just right. A single typed line: "You sure you want to go to war?" Hook. She didn't flinch. She walked to her office, opened a locked drawer, and pulled out a red file labeled "Class Action Candidates." One name on top: Ryan Brooks. Second name: Dolores Green. She smiled. "I don't want war," she whispered, "but if they bring it to my porch..." Pause. They'll wish they'd just apologized. It began not with sirens, but with a leak. A single PDF attachment, anonymously sent to every major news outlet in Chicago. It was titled, Internal Affairs Case 4437B. The file detailed 17 complaints lodged against Officer Ryan Brooks over 12 years. 14 of them dismissed without investigation. 3 inconclusive. None punished. The document included bodycam transcripts, internal emails, one labeled "Do Not Forward," and most damning of all, a memo from a lieutenant urging that Brooks be protected from further scrutiny due to his political connections. Hook. Within 3 hours, it was trending nationally. By noon, the mayor was forced to hold a press conference. "This city does not tolerate abuse of power," she read stiffly. But the public didn't care about statements anymore. They wanted action. And they got it. That evening, Judge Lennox sat silently in the gallery as the city council voted 7-2 to launch an emergency investigation into systemic misconduct. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. But her eyes never left Brooks, who sat at the back, his jaw clenched, surrounded by attorneys. Hook. 2 days later, Lennox's courtroom was standing room only. Not because of her case, it was a simple eviction hearing, but because the people wanted to see her. Wanted to see the woman who refused to bow even after being humiliated, threatened, and publicly attacked. She opened with a quote, "Justice is not an act. It is a habit, and today we practice it again." Hook. In the back row, Dolores Green sat with her grandsons. Next to her, the mother of a boy who had once been tackled in the school hallway by Brooks by mistake. And beside her, a man who spent 2 nights in jail for loitering outside his own home. They were strangers last month. Now they were a movement. That weekend, a class action lawsuit was filed. It named Officer Brooks, his precinct, the chief of police, the city of Chicago, and in bold letters, unidentified parties obstructing justice. Hook. The lawsuit triggered a subpoena frenzy. Hard drives, phone records, deleted emails. It was no longer about a slap. It was about what that slap revealed. Brooks tried to speak. On social media, then in a televised interview. "She baited me," he said. "She knew what she was doing." But the footage kept playing. And in every replay, the nation saw a man striking a woman he didn't recognize. Not just a judge, but a symbol. And that symbol had sharp teeth. Hook. In the end, Brooks resigned under pressure. The chief retired for personal reasons. 3 council members were removed in a recall election. 2 prosecutors were indicted. And Judge Lennox? She declined every interview. Instead, she released one statement. "I don't seek revenge. I seek accountability." If you think this story ends with me, you haven't been listening. As the months passed, the city began to shift. New leadership. Mandatory camera audits. Community review boards with teeth. And every time someone tried to forget what happened, a mural reminded them. Judge Lennox standing tall, behind her, the scales of justice balanced not by sword, but by truth.